Can hypnotherapy help you overcome phobias or fears? I'm Jonathan Butler from My Fit Mind, clinical hypnotherapist, RTT therapist, and I've worked with hundreds of people to help them overcome fears and phobias. And a phobia is basically an irrational fear of something. When you rationally know that you've got no reason to be afraid of it, but emotionally, deep down, you are really, really afraid of it. Now, you probably don't know this, but as human beings, we're only born with two innate fears. We are born with a fear of heights and a fear of loud, sudden noises. Those are the only fears we are born with. All the other fears that we grow up with are learned behaviors. They are things that we pick up in our life. And let me tell you something else that's really interesting, but really, really significant as well, is that probably 95% of the time, maybe 99% of the time, a phobia, the thing that you're afraid of, is not actually the thing that you're really afraid of. And you're probably thinking, what does that mean? So let me put that into context. So when people come to me and say, Jonathan, can you help me with my fear of flying? It's ruining my family life. We can't go on holiday. I've got this fear of flying. I just can't do it. Can you help me with it? And unless that person's been involved in some trauma involving an aircraft, there is no rational reason for them to have that fear of flying. There's no association between danger of flying, an accident happening, and the phobia that they have. So, except in those very few cases where somebody's had a particular scare with that means of transport, the fear of flying is not actually about flying. It is actually about lack of control. It's about not being in control of your situation. It's about not being able to manage what's going on, often associated with being trapped. So what I find typically with people who come to me for a phobia, like a fear of flying, is the fear is really about being in a situation that they can't control. Okay, so the fear of flying is simply a symptom. The real issue is deeper and it is wider. So how can hypnotherapy help with this, and how do we go about it? So the first thing that's really, really important is actually to understand that root cause of where that fear of flying comes from. So if you know that it has been related to a bad experience or bad experiences with an aircraft, it's probably a fair assumption that the phobia is actually, it's not an irrational one, it's actually a rational one based upon previous experiences. But what I need to do as a hypnotherapist is actually need to get to that root cause. How do I do that? I do that with what's called regression, which is while somebody is in hypnosis, in that deeply relaxed, receptive state, I ask them to go back, to take them back to memories, to tell us how this issue all began. And it's almost never, in fact, I can't remember a time where it's been to do with an aircraft, but it is always about, if it's a fear of flying, it's always about going back to memories of feeling trapped, of feeling there's a lack of control. And the association with an aircraft is simply a trigger of being in a situation where you feel out of control. So typically there are clues going on for me as well before the session. When somebody tells me they like to be in control of things, they need things to be planned, they're naturally an anxious person. All these things kind of add up to that. So I have some clues, but only by doing that regression in a hypnotherapy session, an RTT session that I do you really understand where this issue is coming from? What is the root cause of the fear of flying? So when I've done that regression, and I've helped the client understand, actually, your issue isn't about a plane. Your issue is actually about finding it hard to be in a situation that you can't control. And it's maybe a trigger that reminds them of an event in their past, quite often in their childhood, where they've not felt in control, and just simply reminds them of that. So once you understand that link, you can then start to break that link. You can start to desensitize the mind to make the mind go, actually, I don't have any reason to fear the aircraft or to fear whatever other phobia it actually is. because I understand it is an irrational fear and it's simply my reaction from before, and actually I'm okay with it. So we've gone from that, let's understand the issue, let's start to desensitize your mind to go, actually, it's okay, I don't really care, it's not really a big deal, to actually then changing the picture. And this is really, really important, because our mind, like a computer, has inputs, it has programs. And the programs our minds work off is the words it hears, the pictures it sees, and the repetition we give it. So what we need to then do in that hypnosis session is change the association with that aircraft, to change it from that place of terror, that place of being trapped, that place of being out of control, to actually associating being on that aircraft with where you're going on holiday, to associate, to almost completely flip the association from being trapped and out of control to seeing that aircraft, that plane, as being something that represents freedom, that represents choice, that represents, going to where you want to go to, having the power and the control that you never had, that is what you're really, really afraid of. And then once you've changed that picture, what we do, what I do, what we do in RTT is we have to reinforce that. I make a recording for people, a recording that I ask them to listen to for 21 days, a hypnosis recording, about 15-minute long, where you're reinforcing that picture that the person wants to have. So that is basically the process, the simple process of help the person understand what the root cause really is, to desensitize them, their mind to basically be not bothered, or certainly less bothered, to change the picture, and then to reinforce with that repetition of listening to the recording until you can get on a plane where you actually look forward to it, where you enjoy it, where you visualize all of those good things. When you change the thoughts and you change the picture, you then change the feeling. And you move from that point of where you might think about going on a plane from having anxiety, from having tension, stress in your body, to thinking about it being happy and relaxed and looking forward to having your gin and tonic on the plane, or whatever your pleasure is. Now, I've talked about this specifically to fear of flying, just simply because that's a common one. But the same principle applies to many things. Fear of insects. Again, unless somebody's grown up in an area, maybe they grew up in an exotic country, sometimes it is about the fear they've seen somebody being bitten, or there's lots of perceived danger around them. But usually the fear is about something else. I worked with a lady a while back who had a fear of small insects. Some insects were fine, others were a problem. And the fear wasn't actually about the insects. The fear was about going to a different place, about leaving her home, because a perception that she'd inherited, that she'd developed in her childhood, was outside the home wasn't safe. And so when she was outside the home, all she would see would be little insects, because she was looking for them everywhere. Therefore, she only ever stayed at home. So her fear was never the insects. Her fear was going to a different place, because the association was places outside the home weren't safe. Therefore, the insects were simply things that were keeping her in the house. So our mind makes these associations, and people have fears about all sorts of things, some of the most bizarre things. But even though the mind knows that it's illogical, it's irrational, your emotional mind believes it. And remember, your emotional mind is far stronger than your rational mind. And that is why talking therapies, cognitive behavioral therapies, in my opinion, in my experience, are not very effective, because you're trying to persuade your rational mind, your logical mind, that it's seeing things wrong. But you can't persuade your emotional mind with your logical mind. So what we do in hypnosis, in RTT, is persuade your emotional mind that everything's okay, that it can let go, and change the association that it has, change the pictures, the thoughts it has about that phobia, to become indifferent towards spiders or insects, and to actually look forward to going on a plane, to change the picture, change the thoughts you had associated with it. So hypnotherapy, and in particular RTT, because of the breadth of what it does, dealing with the regression, reinforcing with the recording, is incredibly powerful at getting people over phobias in one, sometimes two, but more often than not in just one session. So if you'd like to understand, if you'd like your phobias curing with me in just one session, please look at the link below, book a free discovery call with me to explore how I can help you overcome your phobia, put it behind you, and look forward to, or at least just be totally ambivalent to those things that you've previously been afraid of. Thanks for listening. I'm Jonathan, and I look forward to seeing you again in another video soon. Bye now.